So thanks to everyone for coming to tonight's event. Welcome to the ATX Mobile Indian Web Game Dev Meetup. Sorry, it's kind of a long name, a bit of a mouthful. But yeah, we're very excited to hear tonight's speaker, Saam Pahlavan. And he's gonna talk to us for a while. But first, I'm gonna give you guys some announcements, housekeeping, stuff like that. So let's see. The meetups are on the fourth Tuesday of every month. And if you're not already following the group on meetup.com, definitely go on there, become a member, so that way you'll get announcements about future events. We should be doing them every month, so keep an eye out for future stuff. Also, if you guys parked by any chance in the parking garage underneath the building, you are able to get a discounted rate if you're parking. If you ask for a validation ticket from the people at the front desk, the Capital Factory staff, it'll be a $5 for the night parking instead of being whatever, $17 or $20, whatever it might be otherwise. So definitely worth doing that, and it's something you feel free to use in the future. As long as you arrive after 6 p.m., you can always use that for any meetups here. So, and I would also like to thank Capital Factory for letting us use this space. It's obviously a great facility, great TVs and room and seating and all that, good view. So definitely be sure and tell them thanks if you get a chance, and they always do a great job of hosting us, so we appreciate that. And also, as far as sponsors are concerned, we are always looking for companies who are interested in maybe sponsoring one of our events. We basically would just use the funds to pay for refreshments and food for the events, so it's a very reasonable sponsorship rate, but it's a good way to meet and to reach out to and get the ear of developers in town who are working on games. So yeah, if you know of a company that wants to kind of get the word out, definitely let me know. Or if you yourself would be interested in any kind of sponsorship, just get in touch. You can either approach me afterwards or contact me on the Meetup page. There's a button on the side which says contact the organizer, and I'll get an email and I'll get back to you. Feel free to reach out. Also, I would like to open up the floor for announcements at this time. If anybody wants to speak up about people that you're looking to hire, positions in game dev that you're looking to hire for, or if you're looking to find someone to collaborate with on a game development project, or if you have any announcements about community events of a game development nature, feel free to speak up. This would be a great time.
Yeah, I'm just looking to find a freelance coder to do a small project on for the autism community.
Oh, cool.
So if anybody just wants to have a chat, just let me know.
Great, and what's your name?
Richard.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So two things. My name is John Henderson. I'm with IDDH. I'm here in Austin. And one thing that Patrick Curry at the Unity Austin office has taken advantage of is that we are now open for job postings. If you have any listings that you'd like to post on austingamedevs.org, you can talk to me about it and I can tell you what our rates are. We have quarterly as well as annual rates for that. And as Patrick can tell you, he's actually got some contacts, which is pretty good. Second of all, actually, I'm going to be running my own event later in May, on May 21st. The periodic and long delayed next Microtalk show will happen May 21st. The last one I did was last August. So we're going to be doing it at Tech Branch in North Austin. Speakers include Chelsea Hostetter from Frog Design, Beth Mankey-Schwartz from Certain Affinity, Star Long from Portalarium, Ryan Joy, the startup evangelist from Microsoft, and one other person I forget. But in any case, it should be a good show.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
And like John mentioned, I'm Patrick from Unity's office here in Austin, and we're hiring almost any sort of web development position. So if you're interested in web stuff or Unity, come talk to me. Very approachable around town. So,
It really is.
not total lies.
Awesome. Any other announcements? All right.
You all should be listening to or following ATX Game Dev Cal.
Oh, so you run the
Yeah.
calendar. Oh, right. Yeah, so did you want to say something about that?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's just an event of like a calendar of all the local events. So on Twitter, it's ATX Game Dev Cal, and there's now also a Facebook group for it. If you just search for the same name.
It's the best.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually
The fact that no one had to ask her to do it, I think it's just because finding out that there wasn't such a thing, and
Yeah.
I got tired of having to ask everyone else what's going on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. Cool. Well, I guess that's it for announcements. And so the schedule for tonight will be Saam will speak for 30, 45 minutes, roughly. And then we'll have about a 15-minute to 20-minute Q&A afterwards. And then after that, feel free to hang out here, have more drinks, have more food, talk, socialize, whatever. But the only thing is we have to be out of the space by about 9 o'clock because the Capital Factory people want to go home. So that's the only limitation. But yeah, feel free to hang out a bit after things wrap up. And also, I guess, can people interrupt you during your talk to ask questions if they have a burning question, or would you rather hold till the end? Do you have any preference on that?
Let's do it at the end.
All right, so yeah, hold questions till the end, please. But yeah, do that. And let's see. So I guess that's everything I've got. And Saam will talk more about himself, introduce himself, and all that. So without further ado, Saam Pahlavan.
Thanks for coming, everyone. I want to thank Todd and Capital Factory for inviting me to do this. Who's heard of Disorder or my name?
Yeah.
All right, so like a quarter of the crowd. Yeah, thanks for coming. I heard I-35 was like on fire today or something. So this talk is going to be about a game I released this past January called Disorder. It's like a psychological puzzle platformer. It's sort of a postmortem, but it'll be more about how it affected me and how I reacted to releasing a game that I worked on for 2 years. This next slide is my unofficial title because I couldn't pick one, but it's called What Happens When You Release Your First Commercial Indie Game After Working on It for 2 years, or Disorder Postmortem, aka Post-Disorder Releasing of a Video Game in All of My Fields. Before I dive into the talk, you guys should probably know who I am so I can validate while I'm up here like talking and stuff. So I'm not just some like random dude hijacking meetup groups. I'm Saam Pahlavan from Houston, Texas. This is actually my business card. I'm a game maker, an artist, and a podcaster. I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design for a BFA in game development. Graduated in 2013. Couple games. Oh yeah, I'm not actually an award-winning designer.
You won the Captivate Award first year.
The game won the award,
The game did.
not me. So,
Your name on it.
quote.
You designed the game
Yeah.
and the game.
And you repped it at the conference. So.
Like I said, quote.
It counts.
Couple other games I worked on. These are smaller indie projects. Conky Dong is basically the arcade classic Donkey Kong, but you actually get to play as Donkey Kong and you throw barrels at waves of tiny plumber Marios. Still haven't been sued by Nintendo, so that's good. Iris is a little bit similar to Disorder, but it's a game about growing up and perspective. It's also a platformer where you control kind of this scope or iris that alters the level as you move it over things. Get That Swag was one of my first student projects I worked on. It's a competitive platformer similar to the old Mario Bros. Game, which was actually also featured in a museum, which was kind of crazy. Secret Formula is another platformer with sort of bionic commando controls where you're swinging from a vine that you can shoot out. It was actually in the indie speedrun competition, which is a competitive game jam that's actually judged by people like Peter Molyneux and Kim Swift, who made Portal, and we actually won that, so that was really cool.
Another award.
Got multiple award winners.
Game won. Commercially, I've worked at King's Out Entertainment, where I was a UI design intern. And right now I work at Spacetime Studios. I've been working there for over a year. I work on their MMO Arcane Legends as a designer. But we're here to talk about Disorder, which is a psychological puzzle platformer I made. I started in school and eventually we released on Steam. I'm going to show a gameplay trailer and the cool live action trailer we got to make. Centers around basic platforming controls, but you can switch the level by pressing a switch button. We just call them light and dark levels. And there's also these narrative vignettes that show a story about the main character's past and his relationship with his family. And our publisher made this pretty sweet live action trailer to show more of like the narrative side of the game. So I'm going to play that.
Brothers smiled too seldom, only on the days I was well. My memory's a broken landscape, but how did it all start? I was always... we couldn't quite... He didn't deserve what came next. I suppose we're fated to this.
It's not a very happy game, but released it on PC January 13th and later on Mac. I was mostly responsible for the level design in the game. I already did that. What's this talk about? So it's different from a typical postmortem. I'm not going to be like what went wrong, what went right, what we should have done. It'll be more about the months leading up to launch and how I felt during launch. So I'm just going to jump into the journey of Disorder and go a little bit into the development, but not touch on every little thing. But first, here's the team. Alex Probity was our sound designer, composer. Matt McConnell is our writer, programmer. Sebastian Vacuous did all the art, and I did level design and designing stuff. We started the game technically in our sophomore year for a school project where we had to basically pitch a game and have like a small prototype. At the time, it was we wanted to make a game about like schizophrenia, which the game is not about anymore. And we had like a little platformer prototype where you had like an imaginary friend and you were like doing these boss puzzles and stuff. Eventually, our senior year, we decided to make the game into like our senior project. But we found it really hard to make a game about schizophrenia specifically because we couldn't relate to that. And it would just seem like a really daunting task to us. So we sort of went with simplifying the rules of the game, sticking to one mechanic and like really polishing that and making sure all the level design and writing was really good, and like we wanted the player to really empathize with the character and kind of create a metaphor with the switching mechanic and the character's narrative. I'm not going to go into like every single part of the development, like the design and how we came up with the light and dark stuff and the stuff leading to that, because I've talked about it a lot. And I also, on my podcast, I interviewed Matt, and we talked a bit about our feelings of the game and like the development process and go through all of that. So you can check that out. There's my plug for loadingscreenpodcast.com.
Which is monthly, correct?
Yeah. Uh-oh. That's not good.
Interesting. Let me see. I might need to switch the little video box over here. Maybe try your computer output switch. Interesting. Bear with us for one moment.
It's kind of fitting that the game's told this order and we're experiencing this.
Try restarting.
All right, now try your
I think you're...
this video switch thing on the actual. There we go.
Oh. You good?
Yes.
Cool. This is some initial concept art from the game before we went with the 2-color tone period. So in school, we won a lot of school awards and stuff. Like we have this competition called IntelliKey, and we won several awards there, but it wasn't until the actual Captivate conference here in Austin, Texas, that we submitted the game for the student competition, and that made us put our game on Greenlight, and we actually won the student competition there. We also submitted to a festival called Indie Bits, which is a really cool, small Southeast fest. Interesting fact is we won against Banner Saga in Best Art, but they won Best Overall Game, so I'm guessing they just didn't want to give 2 awards to Banner Saga. So after Captivate, we put our game on Greenlight and we formed a studio because we had prize money and we had to kind of like distribute that. And it really gave us the motivation to like complete the project, because it wasn't only people within our friends or family or our school that liked the game. We figured people actually wanted to play this thing and pay for it. That's a picture of our booth at Captivate. This later led to us submitting to the South by Southwest Gaming competition. Another interesting fact, we weren't accepted at first, and then I got an email 2 weeks before the actual expo, and they were like, hey, we have more room. Come on down. And I was like, okay, sweet. And that garnered the attention of Screw Attack. Has anyone heard of Screw Attack?
Yep. Dallas.
All right, Screw Attack's basically like a game video website. They kind of do journalism, but they mostly do like fun videos and stuff. And they have a branch called Screw Attack Games. They published a game called Angry Video Game Nerd, which is about like this YouTuber guy that makes retro videos about video games, and he's angry and stuff. So after getting a publisher, we had a lot more funds and development time. At the time, I was working at Spacetime, and our sound designer also had a full-time job, but Matt, our writer, programmer, was working full-time, and so was our artist. We worked pretty hard from maybe, I think like 6 months was the amount of time we worked on it with Screw Attack, but the last couple of months were super hard crunch periods on Matt, Sebastian. Matt actually said he would like only leave his house to see people like 2 times a week, and he actually lost 10 pounds during those like last 2 months. So yeah, so that was like, so we're all leading up to this point of 2 years of working on this game, and coming from like school into like a professional studio, quote unquote. And we're about to release this game in January. Who's seen Indie Game the Movie here? Okay, most people have seen it, but basically there's a scene where one of the guys from Super Meat Boy is checking the Xbox dashboard, and he's like trying to find Super Meat Boy because it's launch day, and he's just like swearing, and he's like, where the fuck is our game? Like, it needs to be on the front page so we can make sales. That was basically me on launch day with Steam. Like, I went to the new releases and it's like, where's our game? Where's our game? One thing that was different though was it actually didn't show up on Steam till the next day. The way Steam's launch works is basically you get an automated midnight release if you don't change your release time manually. And according to Steam's like time, that's like 2 a.m. here. But Matt decided to hit the launch button a little bit early because we were just like, let's just do it. So we ended up launching January 12th. Like, if you look at our Steam page, it says January 12th. And then the way Steam's views work is basically you get 1 million views on the front page, not like click-throughs or anything, it's just views. So we blew through like all of our views while everyone was basically asleep. So that was like a mess. Yeah.
So, so by views you mean like they actually have 1,000 people or 1 million people who would see you on the front page.
Right.
But are they actually measuring that to see like, oh, there have actually been 1 million people?
I think so. I'm not sure. There's a lot of weird algorithm stuff I think happens with Steam, and like how you get on there longer than that, I'm not completely sure. But I bet it has to do with like inner workings with Steam, probably. So yeah, the first couple of days I felt like so many emotions.
Like Ed McMillan.
So many emotions. And it really felt like there was this weird missing part of me. Like when we launched, it was just like I gave up this like chunk of my body, and like people were playing with it and messing around with it. I think I would have felt that way like even if our game launched on Steam and like it was on the front page forever. I would be like, there's this weird like ownership you have over a game when you work on it for 2 years, and when you give it out to a group of people, you're giving up that ownership. And another thing was like seeing YouTubers play it was super, super weird. I'd had my other games on like YouTube channels and stuff, which was fine, but they're mostly like game jam games. But like seeing people play this game and like react to it was like this really weird one-way communication where like I remember just watching these videos and like sweating and being like, are they gonna like it? And then just like wanting to yell just because I wanted to like say something back at them. This guy's videos were pretty good. His name is Yub, I think, but he's pretty entertaining. His videos were good and they were like good ratio size. I'll talk a bit later about how some YouTubers aren't that great for your game. Yeah, so all of this was like super overwhelming because it was just like checking reviews, watching videos, releasing this game out, reading like YouTube comments, which you shouldn't do. Yeah, so I just needed to like a week to myself. So I kind of took a break for a week, and that helped a bit. I think when you launch a game like this, you should probably like get all the PR stuff you need to get done and all that stuff out of the way, then take at least like a couple days away from games just to like decompress. Eventually we went to, the game was showed at MagFest and PAX South. I went to MagFest in Maryland because that's where Matt was and I just wanted to hang out with him. We didn't really hang out at the booth just because we were really, really tired and we just wanted to have fun, and we were honestly sick of talking about this game and pitching it to people. Yeah. So what was, I think part of the reason I was like freaking out was like the unknown is super scary, and I didn't know what was going to happen when this game came out. And I was building like the release into something bigger than it was going to be ever. Like, you have all these expectations of releasing a game, and you think there's going to be like a parade and fireworks, and it's going to be on Polygon, and like dudes are going to do videos on Polygon or whatever. But it was just like none of those expectations are really ever met. Even if you have bad expectations, that's probably not going to happen. This is some cool fan art from our friend Eileen. I learned a lot about myself through this game and releasing a game. Mostly I learned that I like push myself too hard sometimes for like no apparent reason. Like, I put pressure on myself to do stuff when I don't. There's like nothing outside of myself telling me to do something. It's just like me wanting to do something. I also found out like imagination can be good and bad. Like for me, sometimes I can let that take a hold of me and go kind of like down a dark hole where I'm like just thinking of the worst things that could happen. Also, I feel like a lot of indie games, like no one talks about this part of indie games. They're just like, oh, we did really well and we made a bunch of money. And it's like, well, I mean, there's thousands of games that just fail out there and no one talks about how you feel that week. That's why Indie Game the movie resonates with me, even though those guys were like super successful, because like I felt exactly like Tommy when he was releasing the game and freaking out. But I mean, I'm super proud of the game, and a coworker at Spacetime even said like when I launched that week, he was like, "You've done something people in the game industry, like most people in the game industry, don't even do." And I was just like, oh yeah, I guess I did. Like, you don't really think about, I wasn't thinking about the positives of, you know, releasing a game. And on launch day, I remember talking to Matt, because I was just freaking out about us not being on Steam, and he was just, or not being on the front page of Steam, and he was just like, yeah, it's on Steam, man. We have a game on Steam. And I was like, oh, I guess we do. And he was just like, for him, releasing the game was more of like a weight lifted off his shoulders, because he had been working on it for so long. So his like experience was sort of the opposite of mine, where he felt like it was kind of a freeing thing. This is an arcade machine of this order. It was at South by. It was made by a friend of our publishers. I'm trying to get it from them so I can have that fantastic arcade. Another thing I learned is like I generally don't want to deal with publishers again. Overall, we needed a publisher because we needed the funding, and we needed an outside force to sort of like make us make the game, because otherwise I'm not sure if we would have actually finished it. But there's a lot of things that I didn't get to like touch on a little bit in terms of like trailers and the way your game is depicted, and their audience was a little weird, and I'm not sure like I wanted to cultivate my own audience for the game, I guess, and their audience was really didn't match up great with the game. Yeah, so there's also you know, when you launch a game on Steam, a lot of YouTubers contact you. Not all of them are great. I remember watching some videos that like had the FPS in the top corner of the screen, and the video was like super compressed or stretched, and it's just kind of like framing a really nice painting but with like a really, really shitty frame, because it's just like you want your game to look the best it can be, and having people out there, even though they weren't getting like a huge amount of views, it's just upsetting to see your game out like that. Regardless of, you know, sales or comments or videos or whatever, I'm super proud of the game. I mean, we came from like being students in college and releasing this game. If you told me when I was a sophomore that I'd be releasing a game on the same platform as the games it was inspired by, like Braid and Limbo, then my head would explode. Like, it's crazy. it takes a lot of work to finish stuff, and games are especially hard to complete just because it's such a it's just a super difficult process where you're just making the same thing over and over, and you question why you're doing it sometimes, and if it's like worth it, and if it's even good when you're just staring at the screen for hours and hours. Another thing I'm super proud of in the game is that there's like it's very pure in terms of our design and the way we wanted to make it. There's no like fluff or extra levels just to have, longer play times. From that standpoint, I can say myself that I think it's a good video game if I were to play it. And near the end of the journey, this is a picture of Matt getting his tattoo of a marble from the game. Marbles are sort of like the checkpoints in the game, and they represent remembrance. But the most important thing I learned is on this next slide is you can't control anything but yourself. And that sounds kind of dumb, but it's super true. Like, one of the reasons I think I was freaking out was because I was like not in control of all these things, and I was freaking out about that I wanted them to go a different way. But at the end of the day, you try to make the best game you can make, and then promote it the best you can. But overall, you can't control how someone feels about your game or how the press are going to feel about your game. And this was this is still a lesson I'm struggling with, but you just need to know that do the best you can, and just don't freak out if people don't see it one way or don't depict your game another way. And if I was still upset today, it really wouldn't do me any good. It would just make me feel worse. When you try and control everything, you're just going to end up making yourself feel frustrated. After the game's launch, we launched some DLC a month after, and our Mac version. We also dropped the price to $10 from $12. The future of the team is we're probably not going to make another game because we're all kind of moved on from it. Alex still works at the sound design studio. Sebastian is doing freelance work. I still work at Spacetime, and Matt actually got a job at Bungie as a mission designer on Destiny, which was super cool. I'm in the early parts of prototyping a new game. This next slide is a fan email, which we got recently, and it really reminded me of why we decided to make this game, and that it wasn't really for commercial success, but it was a game we wanted to make. And seeing an email like this really makes you, remember that and feel good about what you've done. So I'm just gonna put this slide up, and then you guys can read it. Cool. That's the end of my talk. You can find me on Twitter at Saam Pahlavan. My podcast is called the Loading Screen Podcast, and my website with my name is called my name, saampahlavan.com. There's a free Steam code if someone wants to quickly enter it. And
cool. And actually, you're right at 25. It took 25, 30 minutes.
I kind of sped through it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Well, yeah, thanks so much. And I know I have some questions, but does anybody else have any questions for me?
So, can you talk about the publisher, why Screw Attack as opposed to other ones? Was there a choice in the matter, and what exactly was their role? What did they do for you?
I won't go into super details because it's just streaming right now, but we can talk after. But basically, why we went with Screw Attack is we actually did talk to other publishers before them. We talked to Adult Swim and Ouya, but they never really offered anything. We were at like this really critical point in the game's development where I think, we had to make this decision of, one, we needed funding, and we didn't want to, the team didn't really want to self-fund because, one, we were all college students and didn't have a huge amount of money. And two, we needed like an outside force to make us finish the game. In school we had, school obviously, but since we were all apart, like I live in Austin, Matt lived in Maryland, and our other two guys lived in Savannah, Georgia, and it was really difficult to kind of have that sense of a team. And I think we needed funding, we needed someone to do the marketing because we didn't have time, and then we needed an outside pressure, so that's why. And they checked it out at South by and like played the game, and they seemed like cool dudes. So.
That's important.
So I mean, on that point, you kind of mentioned like the audience mismatch between their sort of built-in audience and sort of who you imagine would probably be interested in the game. I mean, if you were going to like do things over again, you had like the ideal possible scenario, like how would you go about trying to reach the audience that you do think is the ideal people to see or hear about or play the game?
The problem with some of the Screw Attack audience was awesome. Like they did like their own reviews and stuff, and that was really cool. But they're mostly a YouTube content creator, and most of their videos are Batman versus Superman or something like that. So when you put a game like Disorder after they've released Angry Video Game Jam, which is like a very retro, jokey, comedic game, it's like this weird disconnect of like, oh, now you guys are releasing this game? What?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like this weird art house thing.
Yeah.
Like a comedy
Exactly.
art house.
Yeah.
So, but like, how would you? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of games that are being made by indie studios that are kind of more emotionally complex or more thematically dense, but it is hard for them to find the audience that they want. So, like, what would be your way if you were gonna do it on your own, or do another game in the future on your own? How would you try to go about like finding that audience that you think would make sense for?
I think I'd target more, different websites than what they had targeted. Like Killscreen does a lot of interesting pieces on video games, and there was one piece on like future storytelling that was cool. I can't completely answer that question because I didn't really have the opportunity to make that decision this time. I also feel like I wish I made my own mistakes instead of the publisher doing stuff. So there's that, I guess.
Interesting. Any other questions? I have more, but I want someone else to jump in.
Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, so you said you have this like tendency to kind of push yourself, which might not be so great because you can kind of go overboard in like pushing yourself beyond what's maybe healthy for you.
Right.
But I mean, a lot of creators actually, I guess, find that helpful because it sort of allows them to complete things that they might not otherwise finish, or be able to work on stuff on the side and still have a day job and make it work or whatever. So, I mean, do you like in the future, like how do you plan to balance that sort of, needing to have that time to like work crazy hours to finish your passion projects versus still keeping like healthy life balance stuff?
For me, it was less like physical and more mental, and just pushing myself mentally for like no apparent reason, just to be like, this needs to be better, that needs to be better. It was less like coming home from work and working on the game or whatever, because the majority of like the end of Matt and Sebastian were working on it. I was just putting all this unnecessary pressure on myself. Probably also because like I was only doing like part of the game by then. Like we hit in our development, like we funneled like most games, and all the pressure was on Matt. And at times I felt like oh, I brought my friends into this thing and now they're suffering because we're, and I'm just kind of sitting here and my hands are tied.
Yeah.
Which you shouldn't think that, because, you know, that's bad.
Sure.
Also, talking about indie game, the movie, I think what's interesting is like when I saw that movie, it really romanticizes the idea of indie games and like making the thing you want to and pouring your heart into it. But now I've like experienced that, and I'm like, man, what was I thinking? Like, why was I romanticizing this thing that was like, that was almost literally killing these guys? You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everything you talked about in regards to your notion of control and your need to have it, and how that caused you so much anxiety at the end. Do you think, how much of that do you think was tied up into how Disorder was your first project? And are you as likely to be able to kind of divorce yourself from all the little details that you don't have control over? Can you acknowledge that better now, or will you be able to do that for future projects?
I think it'll get easier with each project and depending on the project. This was a really personal thing because I'm not just talking from like the narrative, because although we relate to the game's narrative, it's not a one-for-one story. It's more of like, this game had been made from like my life transition from college to being an adult. So this game means something completely different from me than from a player. It means like, oh, this is like a game when I graduated college and was struggling to find a job and all this stuff happened. So yeah.
That makes sense. So do you think on future projects that you'll be more focused on the commercial success of the game in the initial planning stages in order to ensure some sort of greater impact or a wider, like, I guess, number of sales or audience or whatever once it comes out, or is that like not so much?
I think it's definitely something I'm thinking about with the next project, and if I wanted to make something that was more art house like this, I would consider, you know, not charging for it, or, you know, there's that game Iris I mentioned. I made that during the development of Disorder, and it was I didn't realize it till the end, but it was really about me and like growing up and my perspective on things, and like that was a really good outlet for that. So I think if I have, you know, the emotional need to express something like that, I'll make a small game, and then yeah.
Yeah.
So the team was 4 people?
Yeah, we had some friends do like concept art and tried to bring on other people, but it just didn't work out.
Was 4 a good size? Would you go bigger or smaller next time?
It was a good size. I think having everyone do one thing was, well, we did have mixed hat or traded hats and stuff, but in terms of communication, it was good. Matt did a lot of the like businessy stuff. He did a lot of stuff. Sebastian mostly handled the art. I feel like it was a good mix of like different ideas without putting too much pressure on all of us, except Matt, because we just funneled that in there at the end, and that was more of like a problem with our tools and our production. I like smaller teams just because it's easier to communicate, and I feel like with bigger games you lose, like a lot of bigger games don't have good tone, like they don't understand the tone of the game. And I feel like our game, you know, when you play it, you feel something and there's a certain tone and there's a certain way, and I don't think that can happen with, you know, a huge project where, you know, an idea is being transferred to another person. It's going to get diluted.
Well, that actually touches on my follow-up question, which is, was there like a main inspiration? Like another game or a movie or something else that was driving?
Yeah, I mean, when we started the project sophomore year, Limbo and Braid just came out, and those were huge. Like, I know another really good thing was when people played it, they're like, this is sort of like Braid, and you're like, sweet, let's do it. So, yeah, those games. In terms of level design, there's that clip in Indie Game, the movie, where Edmund's talking about this is how you teach the player through level design. You introduce one thing, and then you don't have text that pops up when you press A. A lot of AAA games like still get that wrong in some indie games, but like that makes me so angry when that kind of stuff comes up, because it's just like, you're not doing what the medium is supposed to be doing. Yeah. So those games.
Kind of related to that question. If you could have cloned a team, each person, so you had 8 people, would the game have been better? Or would the game have been just the same or different?
I think it definitely would have been different. In terms of production, it might have gone faster. But all of us put a little bit of ourselves in that game, and I'll tell you personally that like our artist put like references to his family in the game, and I think if we added more people, then one, we would have to manage more people, and less of that sort of like personal feel would be in there. But we probably could have used like another programmer on there. Yeah.
Do you feel like working full-time and working on this game, do you feel like that was a major challenge, major obstacle?
Yes and no. For me, since I wasn't like the main programmer on it, it was a little bit easier since I was doing level design. Right now I'm struggling with that, trying to work on like a new project and full-time work. But what I try to do is I separate, my full-time job as just being like a commercial job where I'm like creating a product. And then when I go home, I work on the weird artsy thing I want to make.
How would you handle the relationship with your publisher any differently?
I can go more into detail later, but yeah, I'd think about it a lot more and probably shop it out to more publishers, to be honest, before picking one. I could probably do a whole talk on like publisher relationship stuff, because I learned a lot about that.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So, any other questions? I have just one final one, I guess. But other people can jump in afterwards if they have anything else. But basically, so at the end of the day, I mean, do you feel like, all the time that you spent on it was something that you're happy that you did? Are you glad that you spent all that time and at the very least, even if it didn't necessarily, sell a ton of copies or get a huge audience? I mean, is it like useful to you guys as sort of a calling card for future jobs or future other personal projects you want to work on, or did it have like a good outcome from you in terms of like you feel good that you had the opportunity to put this expression, this piece of like artistic expression out into the world, or other things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of it, even if it, hasn't been super profitable. Because like when we started the game, we never thought like we're going to sell 1 million copies. We're making like this super weird niche game about depression with platforming, which is like, what? Yeah.
Sure.
And in terms of releasing a game, it was just like, from my talk, you can tell I hopefully grew as a person. And, now I have that bonding experience with my friends, make a game with my friends. And ultimately in life, that's like my goal, to, have a studio with my friends and make video games. And it was just like it's a huge accomplishment. Even if, Greenlight is sailing through all these games, it's like, it's a big deal to release a game. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it was worth it. It was, 2 years of my life, but I don't feel like it was a waste or anything.
Cool. All right, anyone else?
Actually, can you go back to that slide with the name of the companies? Just leave it up. I just wanted to write them down.
Sure.
They were like 4 of them.
For the competition?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No, before that. Yeah, there you go. That one.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Well, I guess feel free to hang out, and but thanks again to Saam, and yeah.